Lighthouse. So, welcome and thank you for joining us and participating in the career webinar from the Lighthouse for the Blind. My name is Cheryl Cummings. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Workforce Development Manager here at the Lighthouse. I am a Black American woman who is blind. Today, I am joined by my co-presenter, Sarah Freeman Smith, who will introduce herself in a moment. Um, there are two ASL interpreters who are on screen and will spotlight themselves throughout the webinar. Captioning is turned on, just to let everybody know that. I want also to recognize our moderator host, Elena, who will help us with letting us know when hands are raised and if there are any questions placed in the question and answer part. This is a part of a series of webinars for people who are blind or low vision, deafblind, or blind with other disabilities. The purpose of these webinars is to is to provide you with resources and tools which you can use in your career development or career exploration, and to be able to be sort of actively involved in doing both. Each month, we focus on a different topic, such as this month, we're going to be talking about writing a resume. We've also looked at the use of assistive technologies in the job search process, interviewing, networking, success once hired, and self-employment. So please look out for future announcements, and we hope that you will join us again. But before we get started today, I invite my co-presenter, Sarah, to introduce herself.
Good afternoon, evening to everyone. I'm Central Time Zone, and as you can tell, it's gotten a little dark here, but welcome. My name is Sarah Freeman Smith. I too am an African American female. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a mature African American female with silver hair, short cropped. And I myself have been in the HR recruiting field my entire career, which spans over 40 plus years. So one can say I absolutely love what I do, or I either am a glutton for punishment, one of the two, but I like to say that I love what I do. And especially on the recruiting, the talent acquisition side, I have a background. I've worked for small companies. I have worked for major companies. As a matter of fact, worked for the largest oil and gas company, BP, British Petroleum, for about 3.5 years. And I've also had a background in working with staffing agencies. So I've worked on the inside as well as the outside. And then I've also had an opportunity to work and support and help individuals with disabilities find employment through the vocational rehabilitation services through the state of Texas, where I subcontracted as an employment job coach. So have a lot of extensive experience both on all aspects of employment, and looking forward to sharing some insights on resume writing today.
All right. Sarah, I'm so pleased that you one, answered the phone when I called, and two,
Didn't run for cover.
yeah, and two, agreed to co-present this workshop with me. So I think before we started, I think we wanted to get to know our attendees a little bit. Sarah,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. I'm not sure if we have quite a few, but if you could raise your hand first and foremost, we'd love to find out, or do you have a current resume right now, regardless of whether it's up to date or not? So raise your hand so we can kind of get an idea.
Elena, can you give us a count or? an indication of?
So I hear that there's some hands continually being raised.
think
So,
13 out
okay,
of 19, or no, 9. Oh, it says it at the top. 9 out of 19.
okay. And then
10.
what about those who are wanting to write or getting ready to try to write a resume or rewrite it, raise it?
7, 8 people are raising their hands.
Okay. Okay. So we've got a good, and you said we have about maybe 19
We have
participants?
20 attendees now.
Okay. Okay. Great. Great. Okay. All right.
So I
And
think,
I think that's a good call. Cheryl?
yeah, I think the folks who are here, you're in the right place. So,
hmm hmm Absolutely.
um, I'm gonna start off by talking a little bit about the purpose and goal of this session. So, today, as he said, we are focusing on the resume. So this is uh, a tool that I think can feel sort of mystical and magical. It could be a thing that some people think insists it's the thing that will get you a job. The truth is that a resume is one tool, right? It's a really important tool, which helps you to get a job. Uh, so why have a resume? It's a tool which introduces you to the recruiter, to the manager, to whoever, and more importantly to the company. A resume is a document which tells a, uh, a reader, whoever that may be, what skills, knowledge, and experiences you are bringing to an organization or to a company. Um, there isn't anything sort of magical or mystical about a resume. Today, we are going to sort of, we're going to begin with a brief overview of the different types of resumes. So we're going to focus on the structure and the content of a resume. And we're going to highlight 3 AI tools you can use to help you to write a resume. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand and to uh, ask your questions, or to write your question in the question and answer box. We really want this to be an interactive session where, in as much as we're going to talk to you about our concepts about a resume, we want you to feel free to share your experience and to raise your hand.
hmm Great. All right. Okay. Well, first off, let's talk about the different types of resumes and when it is appropriate to use those types of resumes. There are 3 types. One's called functional, the other one is chronological, and then the third is a hybrid. It's a mixture of the first 2. On a functional resume, it can also be considered, let's call it a skill-based resume, where it focuses more on your capabilities and the skills you bring to the table versus when and where you used those particular skills. And so that would mean that you can talk about your customer service skills. You can talk about your planning skills. You can talk about meeting deadline skills. But this could have occurred, let's say, 20 years ago when your children were young and you were president of the Parent Teachers Association or the Girl Scouts or the Boy Scouts troops. And we all know that those are skills, even though that may be considered an unpaid job, those are skills and talents that you can bring and highlight that can be applicable in a corporate setting. It also could mean 20 years ago, you were working, but you had to stop to care for, a family member, children, for whatever reason. And now you're wanting to re-enter the workforce. So when you use that functional resume, you want to show someone, here are my capabilities. I was fundraising chairman and raised the most money in 25 years that our organization ever did. That's powerful information. But if you start out and tell me you did that in 1999, it makes it less impactful. But you hook me, and that's what the whole point of a resume is about, is to capture one's attention. It's to get that call to action. It is to make that person want to call and learn more. I need to find out a little bit more about how she or he accomplished that. So that's the whole point. You don't want to put everything on that resume so that they don't have to call you. So the functional resume would be appropriate for someone returning back to work after a lapse for a length of time. Or it also could be that you're at a point now, the job that you're working in, you really don't enjoy it, but you really loved what you did 20 years ago and you want to go back to that. So you want to highlight those skill sets that you were really good at doing. So it could be very well wanting to highlight something that's not as recent, but you want to talk about your core competencies and your skills. So that's a functional resume. Now, ultimately, that may get you into the door, but you will ultimately have to provide more detailed information, which will lead you into the chronological resume, which is the most popular and typically most acceptable and preferred resume. And that's where you are listing your positions. Most recent is the first, and the earliest, or the job that you had 10, 15, 20 years ago, would be the last that you're going to highlight. And I should state, a functional resume typically is not submitted into an applicant tracking system simply because it has no dates and it doesn't have company information, nor it could very well have a job title. A functional resume is most appropriate when you have a referral, or someone, or you are trying to get entryway into an organization and you're submitting it to pique that person's interest. Or it could be, I know someone within the organization, you give it to me and I can say, I have this friend, they're returning back to work. Here's a little information, a resume or some information on their prior work history. Then that manager says, oh, this looks good. Interesting. I'd love to talk with her. And then that would lead you in to come in with your chronological resume, which would have more dates. So the chronological resume always starts with the most current position and you work your way backwards. And so it's not important specific dates, but you can either use months and a year or a year. I typically, and most recruiters advise, if you've had a position that's under 2 years, then just use years. Let's say 2021 to 23. You don't have to show 12/21 to 2/23 so that they can calculate that time frame. You can just use the year dates, but definitely you don't have to put April 1st, 2021 was when I started, in June 28th, that specific detail. But you must at least try to get some semblance, either a month and a year close. And obviously you're going to talk about the company, give a little bit of background if it's not a common name company. So the chronological is the one that you commonly see. And then the last is a hybrid. So it's a mixture of both. I highly encourage people to use a hybrid when they really, really have some good skill sets, but that's not within their most recent role. So it still gives them to tout the things that they are very good at, but then also can show, I've had a stable work history, but my true love may have been mid-career when I was doing college recruiting, let's say. I am now a recruiting manager, but I loved doing the campus recruiting. So I would use a hybrid resume, which would show my current job could be in a leadership role, but I would highlight the things and accomplishments that I did when I was doing, campus recruiting, so that would be more from a hybrid perspective, and then show further down when I actually did the college recruitment. So those are the three typical types of resumes. So I can't tell you what would be best. You would know, in your particular situation, what would tend to be the best format for you to use. But that's the three types.
And so we're going to continue on with talking, and I'm sure everybody knows this, but we just want to set up sort of a foundation that we're then going to move from. So we're going to talk now about like what are the sections in particular of a chronological resume. So always at the top is the contact information. Next is it could be an objective statement and or a summary of qualifications or skills. The next section is then the work experience and followed by education. So there are other sections such as activities, affiliates and memberships, and publications, but for the sort of basic resume, the sections are your contact information, your work experience, as Sarah said, listed chronologically, sort of reverse chronological order, and education.
And I want to insert here, even though typically you'll still see a lot of resumes with objective, most companies prefer a summary of qualifications, SOQ, where you get a chance to kind of summarize all your years, 10 years of customer service, background in a retail setting or customer service within, a service industry or wherever that may be, where you get a chance to summarize and highlight your skills. So, because at the end of the day, let's be honest, the objective, I want a job.
That is absolutely,
at the end
that's
of the
true.
day,
Yes, yes,
that's the end of the sentence. So why are we here? I'm
right,
sending you this because I need a job. Now I
right.
got to tell you about me. So let's just cut to the chase and go with SOQ, summary of qualifications. And then the other aspect, most resumes will say put your education toward the bottom. I am a strong proponent. Education and learning is always is vital and very important to highlight, especially when it is most recent,
Mm-hmm.
because we live in such a fast-paced, technology-driven, what you went to school 5 years ago, there wasn't even a mention of all the things that AI could do. Now let's fast forward. You need to change. So show your relevancy. So in other words, if you either just graduated from school or went back to school or currently attending school to get, a second degree or complete a degree, I believe in putting that front and not making it at the bottom, because if you don't hook them with, hey, this person is on top of things and they've just recently graduated and they've, got, whatever your degree is in, and you can even list some of the courses, put a GPA, especially if you are working and you've gone back to school, anything above a 2.0 and you're holding down a full-time job and a family. I think that's noteworthy to put on a resume. But on the other hand, if it's like myself, I went to grad school and finished in 2005 or 4. Well, as far as they're concerned, that's Jurassic Park days. So I would put my education down at the bottom. Now, I may have taken some online course certifications, things of that nature, but you can also mention that as well in your education, toward the bottom. So that basically is just a little bit of a footnote. So if you've just recently graduated, and I would say anything 5 years to present is noteworthy to list as something to show that that your education could be to the forefront and not toward the bottom. Mm-hmm. And don't also forget about, as she stated, activities or volunteer organizations, especially if you've held leadership roles. It shows that even though you may not have worked, you get a chance to talk about and can use during the course of an interview the time and amount of effort that you put in your volunteer organizations, especially if you're holding down leadership roles. So that gives them some talking points as well.
Awesome. So,
Mhm.
if anybody has any questions, feel free
Yeah.
to raise your hand. We can stop and answer questions. Um, but if not, I'm going to continue talking in about,
Um,
yeah,
sure,
do we,
do have one question.
okay, awesome.
So Andrew asked, is it still good to list skills/positions for a job with an organization or a company that no longer exists due to closing its doors?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh
That
yeah.
is nothing out of your control. It happens all day long, every day, and will until the end of time. So yes, you would simply put the name of the organization, whatever your job title, and the years that you were with. If even though the company is non-existent, there is some forms, depending upon how large of a company it is, that they can validate that you in fact work there. But unless something, God forbid, do Mother Nature. I remember I was working during the time of Katrina, and everything records was flooded, and you can only imagine stuff was washed away in the Mississippi River.
Right.
A lot of companies weren't online back then. They had paper, files. So sometimes it is what it is. I mean, you got to put it there. But hey, what do you want me to do? It's still perfectly appropriate to put that there. Yes, and should not be a problem.
Excellent question. All right. So going back to talking about sort of the content, and we're
Mhm.
going to talk about the contact information, which is always at the
Oh,
top of
very
the
right.
resume, right?
Mhm.
And today it's sort of nice because all you need to first, your name, full name, your phone number, an email address, and if you have it, a link to a
Mhm.
LinkedIn profile. Um,
And I forgot we should have inserted the city is also important because you don't need your full address, but
right,
you should have, Houston, Texas in a zip code or something so they at
right.
least know that
Yeah.
you are living and you're not on, you know, the Starship Enterprise.
Well, before we talked about that, I wanted to talk to you because you know, I've counseled people and I've said like, please make your email address a little more professional than it is at present. And I had one person say, "Well, at least you'll remember me." And I'm thinking,
Yeah,
yes, but maybe
not in a good
not
way.
not in a way you would like.
Not in
So
the way you want me to be remembered. Yes.
yeah, so could you talk about that? Because I know in previous
Oh
conversations you've
yeah,
talked about
we
that
we've seen
experience.
we have
Yeah,
seen many, and yes, it could be the discussion at the water cooler, but not that type of discussion. I can recall, as I stated, I've been in this business a long time. I've seen email address best abs ever, forever at yahoo.com, long sexy legs, long black gorgeous, I mean hair. You have seen sexy grandma. I have seen it all. And you're sitting there going, and this is a professional company, and okay, I know you've had this email address a long time, but you want to make your best impression. You only get one chance to make a first impression. You don't get to go back and circle back again and say oops. So why not make it simplistic, even if it's your initials, SF Smith at yahoo.com, or mine is quite simple. I want them to remember me, so my email address is my full name, Sarah Freeman Smith, and so they see it and it's there. So be cognizant, of what message you're sending with your email address, and then most importantly, I also share this little tidbit. If you've got an email address and it's as old as I am, and God knows I have thousands of emails, it is so easy to lose an important email, if you're getting junk and spam and all that other kind of stuff that you get in your email, why not just create a special email account with this new professional email address tag, where you know anytime you go to that, it is job related, whether it's today or 3 years from now. You know, you only use that address if it is for work related. So it makes it so easy, so manageable. You're not going, well, I didn't see that email. I can't tell you how many times, unfortunately, a lot of times when a recruiter will contact someone, it gets misdirected to spam because it goes through another layer or filter for some reason. And you're sitting there going, I never heard back from them. And you go open up your junk folder a week later and you find that there are 2 or 3 emails that you didn't even know you had. Well, guess what? I sent you the email and you didn't respond. The second line is a recruiter will contact you, which leads us to the
The
phone number.
infamous phone number.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Everybody can
So,
put a phone number down there, can they not? Yes.
yes. But I mean, I'm going to talk about the phone number, and then I want you to tell at least one
Oh,
or
yeah,
two
that one
stories.
story. Yeah,
Yeah.
that funny story. Yeah.
So I mean, it sounds really basic, right? Oh, yes, I've got a phone number. So please, if you once you write down your phone number, make sure the phone number is actually working.
Mm-hmm.
Make
Mm-hmm.
sure you have like space, right, on your
You're
your voicemail.
it's not
It's
you don't get that message. The person's voicemail box is full and
right,
cannot accept messages at this time. Please call back. Click.
right, right.
Yep.
And then, make sure that the voice that the person hears when they call you is actually your voice, right? No
Mm-hmm.
kids, no barking dogs,
Mm-hmm.
no favorite
No
songs,
Kendrick Lamar talking
right?
about Dre. No, none of that.
Right. Yeah.
No, no favorite song by Celine Dion or your gospel. No, don't need any of that. It's hello. This is Sarah Freeman Smith. Sorry, I missed your call. At the sound of the tone, please leave your name and I will call you back at my earliest convenience. That's it. Just
Right.
sound as professional and as friendly as you possibly can, and energetic too. Don't sound like you just left a funeral or something and you're depressed. So make sure that it is the, again, first impression. Oh, nice sounding professional voice. Okay, great. And the way you want to check if your voicemail, because most people go, I have a voice message. But if you get a lot of spam callers, guess what? They take up that space.
Hmm.
And even though they don't leave a message, it triggers your voice message to come on in that space after space after space. And you manually have to go and delete that. I didn't learn that until many years ago myself when I was going, I never knew that. Okay, so now do you know? So make sure you clean up the space on your voice messages as well.
And now please share your
Oh, the
story.
funny
Because
story.
yeah.
I used to do a lot of recruiting. I worked for a financial services company and was a call center. So we hired quite a few of college students because most of our work was part-time evenings and they could work on weekends. So I contacted this person. They came in for a job fair that we had, and we gathered resumes at that time and called the person back. Well, the phone number that they left, they had 2 phone numbers. The cell was one that I could not leave a message because they didn't have voicemail set up. So there was a second phone number. I called the second number, alternative number, and a lady answered, and I asked to speak to the young man. And she said, well, baby, if you find him, I haven't seen him in about a month. I don't know why he gave you my phone number. I'm his grandmother, and he comes by here every now and then. But if I see him, I'll tell him, and this is about a job, or I'll call his. And I'm going, now, why would he put his grandmother's number knowing he's not even going to see his grandmother? So if you have an alternate number, please make sure the person can relay that message or can get in touch with you to contact. So it is good to have an alternate because most recruiters wish there was a second number. But my goodness, to leave it with grandma who hasn't seen you in a month and a half is not a good thing. So
Right.
please definitely make sure the numbers that you leave are good contact numbers and it's about a job. So
Right. And so the last part of this is the address, which Sarah mentioned earlier, that really you just all you need
Mhm.
is your city, state, and zip.
Right.
Um,
Data privacy. Don't People don't
abs
need to know where you physically live in these days and times.
right,
Yes, no,
right.
that's not necessary. You can complete it on a official application if there's interest, but not necessarily on the resume because it's getting handed around all kind of places. So best to be safe. And then of course your LinkedIn profile, you can copy your LinkedIn profile to in that I would suggest if you do not have a LinkedIn profile, it's free. Set it up. You can copy and paste from your resume, your LinkedIn profile, because every recruiter will look at that LinkedIn profile. So if you have it, make it simple. If you don't, most recruiters are going to be lazy and they're going to go, you mean I got to go type Sarah Freeman Smith in this thing? It's a whole lot easier. Click. It shows you're a professional. So definitely leverage. And then there's another reason when you're in an interview, LinkedIn profile, you can check the people you're interviewing out too. So anyway.
True. Yes.
Mhm,
Yeah. And I think we just want to talk a little. I know you talked about the objective and the
mhm.
summary of
Qualification.
qualifications. Yeah. I mean, I think some of the so one of the reasons I heard that there could be useful to write an objective statement is especially for somebody who might be transferring from one field to another or is looking for work in another field, that you could actually use your objective statement to sort of highlight the skills you have
Mhm,
and that you're bringing to whatever the next field is. Yeah. And it's always tricky because, in sort of preparing for this workshop, I looked, I did a little research and I looked in to see like what other recruiters are saying. And some say, oh no, you you don't need the objective statement. And others are like, yes, I want to see it. So
mhm,
um, but I think whether you choose to do it or not, it needs to be sort of clear. It needs to be
mhm,
concise, and it needs to be, I mean, so concise and short. Not,
mhm.
not very extensive.
No.
Um,
Mm-mm.
and then can you talk the summary of qualifications? I mean, like how much information should you put into that?
I think it's important, first of all, to take, and the resume is you are having an opportunity to create your own narrative. You take the reader where you want them to go and what you want them to know. And the reason why I find the summary of qualifications very valuable is
Mm,
don't assume just because I see that you've been, working in the retail environment for the last 10 years that you want to stay in the retail environment, especially if you are submitting your resume to a non-retail entity. But then I'm wondering, well, what do you want to do? You've been in retail sales. Well, why are you, you need to tell me this is why I want to take my transferable skills of customer service skills, quick thinking, problem solving, a team player, strong attention to details, project management oriented, sales driven, creative, whatever, that with the position that I'm applying in your organizations, I want to be able to take that and do even better than what I've done in the last 10 years. So you get to tell me that because you can start out, hey, I have this amount of experience, but I want to grow and learn with a startup organization, a company that is in the renewable energy field. I've worked for oil and gas companies, and now I really, really am into clean energy and all. So you get to tell your narrative. Don't assume that they can understand. Yes, your ultimate goal is to get a job, but tell them why you feel that you will add value. Because again, I tell this story all the time. Everyone tunes into one main radio station, and it's entitled WIIFM. What's in it for me? That hiring manager, that recruiter, they're sitting there looking at your resume and say, what does Sarah bring to the table that's going to be valuable for my company? So you speak to that immediately. I'm going to bring you 10 years of retail management experience that is transferable because I can use my creativity because you've got the job. You know what they're asking for. So you just translate that in about 2 to 3 short sentences and they go, okay,
Mm.
all right, let me read more. So that's where you get to kind of sell yourself. It's almost like an elevator pitch, as they say, where you get to kind of summarize who I am, what value I have, and how I can make a difference or an impact with your organization. So that's
All right.
my summary of qualification spiel.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna pause there because I think we've talked about a lot of stuff. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if anybody has any questions, if they want to raise their hand, or if
We have a couple questions.
okay.
Chelsea asked, is city still relevant when applying for jobs where you're looking to relocate, or would it hinder the applicant?
Well, if the job posting basically, are you saying that you want to relocate? Let's say in my instance, I'm in Houston and I'm applying to a job in LA.
Right.
Then perhaps, yeah, because again, the first question is if the company's going to entertain, are you relocating yourself or is this a job? If it's a professional level job, oftentimes they will cover relocation. So it's up to you if you don't want to put that in, but ultimately it will be something that you will have to disclose because a formal application is going to be required. So if you submit the resume without a city, it's usually going to, they say, hey, we found your resume on Indeed, like your background. Here's a link, please apply online. Well, guess what? You're going to have to put it in there. But you could also put as a subline after you put, let's say, Houston, Texas, in parentheses, uh, open to relocation or willing to relocate.
Mm.
And that kind of sheds a little bit more light. Oh, okay, willing to relocate or willing to relocate, looking to relocate to Phoenix, Arizona. You can be very specific. So then that tells the reader, again, you've just taken them. I'm planning to move. If you're going to put it out there on your resume, they know you're planning to move. So it's not like, oh, I wonder will they want to come in the middle of this desert. So you could put something to take the reader there as well. And also, you can also explain that even in a cover letter, but you got a 50-50 chance on cover letters. Some people read them, some people don't. So you might as well put it out there. So you could put a statement similar to that.
Nice.
Hopefully that answered that question. If not,
All
you can.
right. And then our next question is from Andrew. How do you list a nonprofit organization you volunteer for, especially if it's a term limited position and you are returning for a second, third, etc. time? Um, and this is for a LinkedIn profile and or a resume.
Say he wants to know how should I list my
How
volunteer
to,
work experience at a
yes.
Yeah.
nonprofit.
Right.
And
Yeah.
term limits. What? Meaning it's a short term, like a 3-month assignment or something. What do you mean?
It looks like they raised their hand. Andrew, you are unmuted. If you could also unmute yourself.
So I volunteer on a group that's an advisory council to my state's governor, but
Mm-hmm.
you can only serve 2 3-year terms before you have to step down for a period of
Sure.
time. And I'm just now coming back, but I'm finding I'm having a lot of problems trying to get it uploaded on my LinkedIn profile. So
As a volunteer, the work experience,
yeah,
professional.
it's completely volunteer, yeah.
Well, when you say you're having problems uploading, I think there is a section in LinkedIn, doesn't it have for volunteer organizations or something?
I feel that it does.
I'm
Um,
almost sure I haven't explored that because I haven't used that personally myself, but I've seen it. But let's just say they could have changed it. And you know who you can also find out, LinkedIn has a 24-hour call desk through Be My Eyes. I would simply call them and say, hey, where's the volunteer section on this profile? Can you direct me to there? And if it's no longer there, I would still put it under professional experience. And I would just simply make it look like if you were, working for, Microsoft Corporation, you'd put ABC company, the date, the time, and show, what that 3-year period, and then show your present where you're returning again if there was that 1-year gap or whatever that break might be. So you could still show that continuity. But I think I'm almost sure I thought it was a volunteer section, but they have done some revamps, so I could be incorrect. So if that's because that's valid experience. I mean, hey, when you work for a nonprofit, you work harder than you are when you get paid. So definitely want to make sure you highlight that. So that's what I would do, especially on LinkedIn. And now, obviously, you can just create a heading section on your resume, volunteer work experience, and then put all of that listed out if you have some professional work experience that's listed above.
Yeah, and I on some resumes that I've written, I've included it as part of my work experience, but also indicate that it is a volunteer position, right? Because
Right.
I don't want anybody to feel that I'm
Right.
trying to mislead them by suggesting that it was
Right.
actual like work that I was paid for.
Exactly.
So I think there's some flexibility there.
Oh, yeah. And you can just take the word professional and just call it experience. So
Right.
my most recent experience, you start out ABC nonprofit organization, what have you. Then the next would be, maybe 3 years ago, I had a paid gig just when we were coming out the pandemic or whatever that may be. But again, you highlight in parentheses this, one was volunteer, the other ones, then they would assume that that's a professional position. So yeah, you can definitely list it that way on a resume. And the same way on LinkedIn. I mean, it can mirror the same way. It just flows.
So any more raised hands or questions, or should we move on?
I might want to interject also, Andrew, for the nonprofit. If it is a nonprofit that has a good website that lists their programs and services, I would highly recommend even including that underneath along a descriptive for someone to check out. Because if it's, unless it's, a United Way or something where everybody is familiar with, they could obviously go and check out and go, oh, this organization is doing some great things and some, great services and things like that. So that also would help bolster, because oftentimes recruiters, if it's an unknown, they're not going to pick up the phone and say, what kind of nonprofit is this? A nonprofit with 3 people, or is it 300? And what kind of, that if they're not familiar. So it makes it so much easier if it's a hot link right there, but they can go click, check it out and say, oh, this kind of, it looks good and it aligns with some of the things that we're doing. So I would encourage you to do that as well.
So,
okay.
All right. So do you want to talk about like the work experience and AI tools, all that sort of fun stuff?
The work experience, basically make sure it does not sound like a job description. And always you writing your resume in third person. I did this, I did that, I performed, I leave the I's and things like that out. It's always third person, but you don't want it to sound like a job description. And this is where I would strongly encourage, if you're not, good at wordsmithing, is to leverage and use AI. You have a job description, or you can look at, for most of us, how many times when you've applied for the job and you get it, you don't keep that job description handy, for future reference. But you can always Google, customer service or whatever your, engineering position or whatever the job title in industry, and see what is generated as a common job description, and then begin to take from there. What the reader wants to know is basically what your job title was in just maybe 2 sentences, responsible for tracking and providing metrics to the management team of the number of constituents that were served in our office that needed referrals for medical, purposes or something. And then you talk about created, or streamlined a spreadsheet that reduced number of entries and made it more readable for management, developed a checklist or what the reader wants to know is, when you were in this job, did you just sit and punch check box, or did you do something to accomplish, achieve, improve, streamline, reduced, enhance something? So that's where you get to be able to write in what you did, because then they can call and delve more deeply into the specific mechanics of what you did from day to day. So if I was an administrative assistant, yes, I'm answering phone calls. Yes, I'm accepting packages. Yes, I'm managing calendars. But I want to know if you managed 5 managers' calendars at one time. If you put a statement, manage calendar management for team, and didn't tell me, how many people are on that team? If you had 10 or 12 people, that's like herding cats. Well, tell me, I managed the calendar for a 12-member team in a geographically dispersed um, uh, uh, workforce. So some on the East Coast, some Central, some West, some even could be in Europe. Can you imagine?
Wow.
But if you just told me you just did calendar management, that sets you a cut above most of the candidates. So you have to make sure you tell me these are things that you did, and it was very challenging. You don't have to say it was stressful, but I can only imagine. So that makes that job detail stand out. Even if you did something, I remember interviewing someone, and she said she had no accomplishments as an administrative assistant or coordinator. And I said, well, she said, I just did, we ordered a lot of supplies, and I had to keep track, and they had deliveries coming in all during the day. And sometimes even I'm going, well, how did you keep up with that? She says, well, first of all, I realized they were ordering from all over the city. They could order a lot of that from a Costco or Sam's and save a lot of money. They didn't realize that they could get office supplies, ink cartridge, paper, but they were going to an Office Depot for this and something for that. And she wind up streaming. I said, but you streamline, you reduce the number of vendors by how many? Well, now that I think about it, we had about 10. We only wound up with about 3.
Hmm.
Is that not noteworthy? And it
That
was
is
something as simple. And she thought, well, we just went to Sam's, got a Sam's card, and just pulled out. Okay. Well, you don't have to make it sound like that simple. Make them call you and find out, hey, you can go get a Sam card yourself. But I'm going to say I streamlined our order purchasing process by reducing number of vendors by 25% or whatever we determined what that number was. That's impressive. Now, don't tell me I told them to go get a Sam's. No, you want them to go, how did she do that? That's the call to action. That makes it stand out. So something that they can quantify, something that they can measure, that makes you stand out when you're putting in your information about your job position. And especially also, don't forget, if you were recognized, employee of the month, perfect attendance, or sold the most, got the most people to sign up for a loyalty card in a month, or whatever that may, any type of recognition that was given, make sure you highlight recognized as team player of the month, or whatever that may be. Also, people tend to discount that as well. So
And I think when you're putting together your resume, there's some options. So you could write that, and I think this is the better way to do it, is to write it like at the end of whatever sort of once you finish describing your accomplishments or your impact at a particular job, you could also have a section that's just awards and recognition, and write it there. But I think for most of us, if we're trying to have like a one-page resume, um, it makes sense to put it right under the sort of description of your particular job. Um, the other thing is I know I've done this in the past. I got a little carried away and I've written, 6, 7 bullets as I
Mhm,
describe a job.
mhm,
And I think the reality is you can get away with 3 or 4,
mhm.
right?
Exactly. Right.
As long as they are really showing your sort of the impact, as Sarah said, that you had on the particular position. And if you're somebody that you're thinking, oh my gosh, what do you mean? You can certainly Google active verbs as you're putting together your resume, and you'll find that there are lots of websites that have this information
Mhm,
that can help you come up with ways of talking, you know, in a sort of focused
mhm,
and informative way to a recruiter about sort of the achievements you've had on your position. Because this is the work experience is truly like it's the part of your resume
mhm,
that is really going to sort of support everything else, right? So, I
mhm,
mean, you list out all your skills in the qualification section, but the work experience is
mhm.
the thing that will support that. And hopefully, when somebody reads your resume, they can say, "Oh, so I see up here she listed team player, and here in this particular job, she's describing how that skill was used or something like that."
Mhm, mhm.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah.
I like your example. You want to talk about the Happy Bakery?
Oh,
I thought it was good. I mean, it's something as basic, but it
yeah,
gets people to think because, again, most people tend to think, okay, no, but it highlighted just two, three of those bullets.
yeah. I mean, if you have it in front of you and can read
Hold
it,
on. Let me go back to it because I was
yeah,
flying by. Okay,
yeah,
so they're at, okay, hold on. This is an example. They're at Happy Bakery, and let me counter sales clerk or something was their
right,
title.
right,
Okay. And of course, the year or years that they worked. So here we go. Um, answered answered inquiries of regarding baked goods where 5% of the customers tended to buy more than what they came in to purchase. Been tracking that because they go, I'll take a dozen donuts, and next thing you know, we got some new bear claws fresh out the oven. Next thing you know, they're walking out of there with some bear claws and a dozen of donuts. Okay.
right,
So just kind of be mindful of that. And, hey, you can, rough estimate. Nobody's going to sit there and say, pull out your, sales ticker tag or something like that. The other one was aided customers to use new aided customers to use new sales technology to streamline customer purchases, where they have the little kiosks.
right.
So being able to assist. So you obviously are technology savvy and say, hey, let me show you how to use this. This is basically very simple, where other people go, well, that's okay, I'll do it for you. No, this is why. And being and then I think the other one, and then gathered customer feedback to share with management, which led to maybe creating, a new product development or expanding something that they really liked and that they wanted to see. Because oftentimes management is not close to the voice of the customer. You are. So beginning just simple little things like that, you have to sit and think, okay, yeah, it was a heavy traffic, high call volume area. Tell me that. I mean, phones are constantly ringing, people
Mm.
walking up at your desk, heavy traffic, heavy delivery. So you have to again paint that picture for that reader so that they can get an idea. Wow, well, this person really can work in a high stress, high pace, fast paced environment. So that's what we mean on the work experience. So, do we have any questions at this point? Because this is usually the toughest.
Um,
I don't see any
Okay.
questions.
Mhm. Also, simple things like where you
Oh,
were added
we
increase of responsibilities or added additional duties to help support the team during an absence of someone, maybe going out on a leave or something. Mhm. Did you have a hand?
looks like we did have somebody raise their hand.
Mhm.
Lauren, you are unmuted. If you could also unmute yourself.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Mhm.
It's very informative. So and I have a resume, but it's sold. So first of all, I have a whole list of things like office assistants, things like that. So you just have to detail what you did. Is that
You want
and
to
also
you want to
I
repeat
updated
that again? You said you have a resume that has boxes. I couldn't understand. What did you say?
that has basically what I used to do.
Uh-huh.
Oh, gap though, but it was what I did was one of the jobs was office assistant, and I so
Uh-huh.
you had to detail what you did. I mean, as an office assistant, I would have
Well,
to.
Yes.
you would need to at least give me at least a bullet as to what you did. Now, if you're not applying for something where that skill set of an office assistant, no, you don't need to give me, 6 or 7 bulleted items there, but at least office assistant and, maybe 1 or 2 sentences that you did. Is that something that you are wanting to continue to do?
Yes, and remote at that, and also I'm just wondering how to change that. That since, or would it be appropriate to say, since the pandemic, that I'm interested in remote
Right.
work.
Well, you can even again under that section where, as I stated, your name, your email address, LinkedIn profile. You can also put a header, seeking remote opportunities or remote based opportunities or something like that. Again, tell me immediately. Let's not waste time. Not waste your time.
Right,
However, I want to put this caveat: the job may not be remote. It could state hybrid or must come into the office. But
right,
I have known when you are the right person, they can modify the job
Mm.
requirement. So you put remote only, and that recruiter goes, it's hybrid. I'm going to skim by you. It could be you could put ideal, interested in remote and or hybrid, discuss it. Ultimately, if they offer the position and it's absolutely not what you want, then you can simply say, the reason I just don't feel that this is right for me is I really need to work 100% remote. Well, maybe the first month you can be hybrid so you can get to know the team. And then after that, we can work with it. But it could be something that's negotiable, in other words.
right.
So
So
if
on the resume, I don't really understand. So I would have to.
So underneath, if you're saying, do you absolutely need to work remote, period? It's don't want to go into the office at all since the pandemic. That's the first question I'm asking
Work
you.
remote, yes, to work to.
You do not want to go into the office at all,
I do
right?
now, I do now.
Okay. Well then, yes, stand your ground. Then it's not up for negotiation.
Okay.
Remote only. Yes.
And also in the things I learned, skills, since the pandemic, would it be right to say since the pandemic learned online and did mostly remote classes?
What? Yeah. No. But you wouldn't say learned. You would just show whatever that course or certification or whatever you took at junior college or what have you. All of that, it would show I attended ABC, for office certification, June 2022 to June 2023 or something. So it shows it was the dates. Everybody, we've got emblazoned. The pandemic was about March 2020, and let's go from
Right.
there. So any date in things like that, you don't have to imply or let me know. I know that this was all, during or after the pandemic. So it shows that you continued to sharpen your saw or learn and develop your skill set. You weren't just sitting, looking out the window. So
That makes sense. That makes sense. Thank you.
yes.
And
Sure.
will this be recorded so that we could go over this? I
Oh,
mean,
most certainly. Most certainly.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, you
that's
can.
great.
But definitely, if it is something that is absolutely not negotiable, again, value everybody's time, put remote based work only, period.
Okay, that's good. Okay.
So when you submit the application, they look at that. Now, it won't stop a recruiter. Hey, you're really great fit, Lauren, but hey, can you come in one day a week? Absolutely not. I'm sorry.
Right.
No. And that's it. Yeah. Okay. And I also want to add, if there are some of you that want to work remote only due for medical reasons, you also have ADA. And I have worked with individuals where you can go and apply for a job that is all full time in person. But because of your ADA accommodation, it could be viable and a company can reverse that and you can do that job completely remote
Wow.
where
Okay.
everybody else works in the office, but you come in and say, I would, for this position, I would need an accommodation, and based upon what that job duty, I can't tell you everything may qualify, but if it's supporting people over the phone and you're preparing reports, etc., why do I have to be in a cubicle?
Hmm.
There's no reason. So,
That makes sense. Okay.
okay. So,
Thank you.
mhm,
Thank you very much. It's very helpful.
you're welcome.
All right. So we're actually at time, but we do have maybe if everybody's willing to give us maybe a little 10, I don't know, what do
Yeah.
you think? Like 10 more minutes?
Yeah. 10 more minutes
Um,
because the rest is education,
right.
certifications,
Yeah.
things of,
And yeah, I mean you've already sort of talked about that.
mhm.
Um, and I don't know, Elena, are there any more hands or questions that people have?
Nope.
Okay. So, do you want to talk, at least sort of mention the three AI tools which you really think are useful when putting
Um,
together a resume?
yes. For those, and I stress it is great to use AI to help enhance and improve your resume, but it is absolutely critical that you go over that and change, edit, and make revisions so that it sounds like you in your voice. Do not have it use a superlative that you would never ever utter, less long even know what the world it is. It sounds great, looks good, but it clearly isn't you. So hiring managers are noticing that they get a lot of resumes that are AI generated, but when they pick up that phone and start talking and that person can barely structure a sentence, then it's clear and evident that's not the same person. So AI can basically articulate well, but go and learn to use your word, synonyms, thesaurus, word hippo, find something to say, now, what the world does that mean? And can I say this a little bit better in the manner in which I would talk? So that it clearly articulates who I am. But one of the AI tools is one who's been around the longest, and that's Chat GPT, OpenAI, and that's accessible. I prefer to use it on my mobile devices. It's a lot easier to navigate and use. The other one is Copilot by Microsoft. I don't know, for some reason, I'm having a little bit of challenges. I used to be able to use it flawlessly on my laptop as well as my device, my iPad and iPhone, but it's gotten a little quirky about logging in, but it's still a good AI tool. And I
Mm.
think, was it Perplexity was the other one?
Yes,
Perplexity.com.
perplexity. Yeah.
That by far is my favorite because it clearly gives you all the citations. It makes it easy for you to copy its responses with the citations included, and it'll work it and rework it well. And you can access that both on your laptop as well as your smart devices. But I highly recommend using at least two to bounce off your resume. And you don't have to put your personal information. You can just do one section at a time, like take your work history and just plop it in and say rewrite, and it'll
Mm.
spit something out. Then go get another AI tool and say rewrite, and then start comparing. So that's why I recommend at least two or three to use. And we'll have that in the handout as well.
Yeah. So I love it.
Mhm.
Any raised hands, Elena?
Nope.
Okay.
Well, I
Oh
hope
wait,
everybody
we just had one.
enjoys.
Oh,
Okay.
Andrew,
okay.
you're unmuted.
Just one last question. If you have a lot of little like volunteer jobs or temporary paid opportunities for only like a couple of
Mhm.
months, what's the best way to list out that for your experience?
I tell people lump it all together, contract slash temporary roles, like a subheading under experience, and then put Kelly services, um, then underneath that, whatever that job title, you know,
Even if they
3 months.
refer completely different companies
Yeah,
slash organizations?
yeah. I mean, because first of all, you just told me these are contract slash temporary jobs. So I know some could be 1 month. Now, when we're talking about less than a month, no. But if you can lump, let's say you worked for a Kelly Services 3 different times over 3 different years, you can put Kelly Services, various temporary slash contract jobs supporting oil and gas, architectural engineering, and governmental agencies doing something, something, move on, then the next. So you've got your dates because ultimately, if the company really wants to know to validate it, hey, I worked for Kelly for 6 months on this one. This one was a 9 month, so you can share that.
Okay.
What the resume is trying to highlight here is what you did, not necessarily when you did it in how long. You see what I'm saying? So you
Hmm.
can just kind
Thank
of
you.
string it all together and make them call and ask, well, how long did you do those assignments? Well, actually, some they did vary because they do know that because it takes up a lot of space if you had to highlight each one in one.
Thank you so much.
Oh, sure, no problem.
All right.
Mhm.
So, maybe we need to do this again because there's more there's more to say about resumes. Um, but what do you think? Should we can wrap up?
I think we've covered kind of the high points,
Right.
but if there are some specific things that, is there a way that they could reach out if they have some questions or something? Uh,
Yes. Yeah, they
mm,
everybody has the workforce development at
mhm,
lhblind.org that they can use to get in touch with us.
mhm.
So, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And don't listen to everybody that says, it has to be a one pager. One pager is usually for entry level, maybe 2, 3 years of experience, but it's kind of hard to capture, 10 years of experience in one page.
Right.
The most important things is it's got to be noteworthy that it is enticing enough to go to that second page. So make it worthy enough that that reader is going to go over to the bottom of that second page or the top of that second page, wherever it is. But if it's good quality information, they will read the entire resume. So I'm not going to read a 5 page resume on somebody who has 5 years of experience. No, that that
Ah.
that's not go. That's not good because if you skim and they cut and they're going, it takes you too long to get to the point. So
So are you
feel
saying 5 or less years, you really should stay at one
I
page?
think you can usually capture that in one page for
Right.
sure. But
Right.
if it's getting beyond that, especially if it's a different company or something,
Right.
it's kind of hard to narrow that down. So and just make it noteworthy enough to read. Absolutely. And the most important stuff needs to be on that front page because
Right.
most recruiters, I didn't share this with you, spend less than 10 seconds reading a resume. They go straight to where you work, the years of experience, and the titles that you held. They're doing a quick glance. That's why
Mm.
that summary of qualifications, if you say 10 years, my job says must have at least 5 years. Okay, tell me where you worked in those 10 years. If it's 10 different companies and I glance down on that resume, not so good, shows poor job tenure. Unless you tell me at the beginning, company was bought and sold 5 times. Again, tell the reader, don't assume I know this. So always tell the reader, this company was bought and sold 5 times during my job tenure. So it looks like you had 5 different jobs, but it wasn't. You just stayed at the same place and different owners. So make sure you make it noteworthy. Okay.
Well, as always, Miss Sarah, it is a true pleasure to co-present with you and So I want to thank you.
Oh, no, thank you.
Just, really thank you so much for doing this. I want to thank our ASL interpreters. Thank you. And Elena for helping with setup and everything. And I also want to thank our participants, right?
Participants, yeah,
Because
absolutely.
there's lots of things going on in life, and we really appreciate the fact
Yeah.
that you chose to join us. And we hope that the information you got from this workshop is information that you can use to help you with your job search or your career development. Um, there are more webinars coming up, so please, pay attention for announcements. And we just want to wish you happy holidays and say that we look forward to seeing you in 2025. So
Yes.
thank you
And
all.
good
for
luck
your-
to each and every one of you on your career search.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Goodbye and
Bye-bye.
happy holidays.
Yeah.
Yeah. Elena, you can end us.